last weekend, I finally got to see it. I finally got to see Kraven the Hunter. For those of you who do not know who Kraven the Hunter is, he is based off he's a villain off the Marvel Comics. He is a well-known adversary of Spider-Man. He, depending on what arc you follow, like the arc I followed was through the animated series of Spider-Man, which aired on Fox Kids. Sergei Kravinoff was a escort for I believe Dr. Calypso. I believe that was her name. And she was to go on safari to find a colleague of hers, a fellow scientist who had disappeared, but had gotten word that he was alive and that he may have found a serum called the Wonder Drug. They end up falling in love, both Sergei and Calypso, and in doing so, they find this scientist. The scientist gives her the Wonder Drug and, regardless of the matter, decides to go against going back home and stay there. When she goes to try to convince him, she is nearly mauled by lions, to which Sergei goes in and gets mauled by them. She gives him the Wonder Drug, which heals him, but also giving him the enhanced strength of animals and having the primal instincts and urge of animals. That's where the cartoon was. In the comics, it's basically the same thing. He's given the drug and has this ability to run like an animal, jump like an animal, have the advanced strength of an animal. He's able to do all this stuff. So in the film, it does just that. Like I said, depending on which arc you followed, I followed the cartoon. I never read the comics because they weren't available to me, and I never got them. My parents never bought them. I think the first ever comic book that I got was a Sonic the Hedgehog comic, and the only reason why I bought it because it was Sonic that was on it, and I didn't know how to read. I just liked the pictures. That was just that. But there was that, and yeah, I could never. It was either I couldn't afford the comics. My parents never got me the comics, and I think where I lived, because I lived on a naval base overseas. I think with the comics, you had, if you were a kid, you had to be the age of 12, because when you turn 10, you got to have your ID. But in order to buy the comics, you had to be 12 because it was like rated teen for something like that. But you had to have your license. It was almost like if you were 21 years old and you wanted to purchase, a over 21 beverage. I don't know if I can say the actual name here. But if you wanted to purchase that, then you had to have your ID on hand. Otherwise, you weren't going to get it. So it was the same thing with the comic books. You had to be 12 and over to purchase the comic books. And then you had to have your ID, which you got when you were 10 years old. But, of course, the other stuff you couldn't do. Because I remember there was a youth center and you could only be 12 years old in order to get it. I don't know why. That's just the policy of what the base had. I don't know. But yeah, so I got to see Kraven the Hunter, and my mom got to see it, but she only wanted to see it because of the actor. Who doesn't? But it wasn't bad. I just wish that they would have, kind of like the Black Phone. So I did do a review on the Black Phone when it first came out. And like the Black Phone, it didn't really specify on certain things that, it was supposed to specify. So how do I say this without spoiling? Because I know it just came recently out, like last week, and it just came out. How can I say? There's like so much. So, for example, it's never specified of what powers Kraven actually have. You have an idea of it, but it's not straightforward. Like, oh, you have this, or oh, you have that. It's not like Spider-Man where he was bitten by a spider and goes, oh, well, he can crawl up the wall like a spider can. He can shoot. Then again, depending on the arc, I grew up with Tobey Maguire, and he actually had it in his hands. He actually had the web mechanism in his arm, like embedded in him. So he was able to jump like a spider. He was able to have the strength of a spider. So why did it happen? Oh, because radioactive spider. They did an experiment on the spiders, and that's how the spiders came cross species genetics, depending on which arc you grew. I grew up with both Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. I grew up with both those guys. Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I don't know. I don't want to. I'll keep that to myself. I'll keep it to myself. But yeah. So like I said, I watched Kraven the Hunter. There were some things that are not specified. They're not simplified. Now, I understand there are movies out there that don't want to over-specify certain stuff. Like, for example, The Crow. 1994 is The Crow, starring Brandon Lee, who is unfortunately who is not with us anymore. So basically, originally, which is also in the comics, the character, the Skull Cowboy. I thought that was a spider. Shoot. So the Skull Cowboy was in the graphic novel, The Crow, but not in the movie. Although you can see deleted scenes and pictures of the Skull Cowboy in the movie, but it didn't make the final cut. The reason being because there's a lot of speculation of why it happened. Some people say because there was so many scenes with, Brandon Lee and the Skull, they had to do more scenes, but they didn't know how to go about it, so that's why it got cut. Other people believe that they didn't want to oversimplify the movie because the Skull Cowboy is a former crow from centuries ago. So every century has their own crow. But this one was a century ago, and he didn't do what he was supposed to do. So kind of like that's his punishment. So that's why he's guiding Eric on his journey. Sort of reminding him, hey, you were on this journey, so you need to do it. There's a deleted scene that tells him, you did your job. If you go and do this, you're going to go as a human. You're not going to be the crow anymore. Don't do what I did. I took that path and lost. Which you can find that deleted scene on YouTube. But again, like I said, they took out that stuff because they were afraid that they were going to oversimplify and take more away from Eric's journey rather than help him. So, I understand their point of view. Here, it was just like there were some things that you could have easily simplified for us. You can easily explain to us, and we would have been okay with it. Because there was just like the question is, does he have regenerative powers? The reason why I asked this is because there's one scene, and it could be just a movie mistake. We've all seen it a couple of times. I mean, we all know that there's these little Easter eggs or these little movie oopsies, like we've seen them, these little movie mistakes that make the cut. We've seen these little bloopers. We've seen them. Like in one scene, the guy, Kraven was fighting off an animal. That's all I'm gonna say. He was fighting off an animal, and he's got the scratches and everything. And then the next scene happens, he doesn't have the scratches anymore. So the question is that a movie mistake? A movie mistake that just came in? Or is that showing he has regenerative powers? Can he regenerate? Does he have super healing like Wolverine, like Logan? If that's the case, okay, cool. But like I said, it is not explained. It is not simplified. So there's that. Some other things you can find in this movie too, if you're paying attention. Some little like hints and stuff in the movies. Others is just like, it's not simplified. It's not explained. Like, how can I say? The main villain, which you're going to find out in the movie, has a condition. But it's never explained what his condition is. We just already know that he is the main bad guy, the main adversary. That's what we know. But they never explain what his condition was prior to becoming this entity. Yeah, so, and then there's this other bad guy, but it's never said about his ability. Like, I'm not going to say who this guy was or what he does to the ability, but it doesn't say how his ability works, what his ability is. He's mostly like just there 1 minute, and then the next he's not there. So it's just like, what is it? Like, what are you? But yeah. So I don't know what I mean. It wasn't bad. It was good. It's a rated R film, so no kids allowed. But I will say this: it did not. So if you guys do go to watch this film because you want to take a chance on it, don't stay. I will warn you: don't stay with the credits, because we all know all Marvel films have credits, have a post credits scenes in it. This one does not. Myself and the other movie patrons were in the movie theater waiting, and there was no post scene, which I was very surprised. I was rather surprised, but yes. There is no post-credit scene, so you don't need to stay there and find out, yeah, so that's about it. But, yeah, so if you are going to watch it, let me know what you guys thought. But yeah, it could have been more. In my opinion, it could have been more, and I wish they would have specified more stuff. So, that's just me. But, yeah, see you around.